Hi everyone, I'm Barkha Dutt and you're with The Mojo Story, our independent digital platform that does a deep dive into the issues that really matter to you and me. On the program today, I want to start by asking you a question. Have you deleted your WhatsApp account yet? Or are you like me, hovering between WhatsApp and Signal, unsure, unclear about what really is the difference between the two, finding yourself kind of lonely on Signal, like a new neighborhood or a new country where you don't have too many friends, and finding yourself migrate right back to WhatsApp despite all the massive noise around it? After a new business policy that was announced by Facebook, which owns WhatsApp, Signal actually became the most downloaded messaging service in India. Within a span of 4 days, the numbers show that there were 2.3 million downloads. Yet tons of people I know are still on WhatsApp, still don't understand what the fuss is about, and ask a more fundamental question. Does it really matter what you delete and what you keep when big tech is really big brother and 2021 is the internet's version of 1984? Let's bring in our panel today. We've got three experts from the space who can actually decode this for us. And let me introduce them, four panelists rather. Let me introduce them all one by one. We have with us on the program Srinidhi Srinivasan, who's with Ikigai Law. We're joined by Pranesh Prakash, who I think understands this space better than most of us do. We have Abir Roy, who is with Sarvada Legal. Welcome to the program. And we have Praveen Khandelwal, who actually represents the consumer groups, the consumer sentiment, but is here to talk about why they're actually asking for a ban on WhatsApp. That's not about to happen, of course, but what's the sentiment that actually led to that. So let's start the program with them straight away. And let me start by asking you, Pranesh, to break this down for us. So in like they say in Hindi, mota, broadly, if you ask somebody, do you follow what's going on with WhatsApp? They'll say, well, I think what I've understood is that you're not able to hear me.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Are you using AirPods? If you are, you need to drop them. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Barkha, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
No worries. I'll take the same question to Srinidhi. We'll try and reconnect to you. It might be your internet line. Srinidhi, let me ask you the same question. Can you explain what the fuss is all about? And let me unmute you before you do that. Go ahead. You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself. You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
Barkha, what the WhatsApp privacy policy update does is that it clearly sets out the kinds of data attributes that WhatsApp will be collecting and how they use it as well. And I think a key concern that what's prompted a lot of people to migrate to these other platforms is the fact that they now clearly know the different kinds of data points, stuff like device information, usage information, which will be collected by WhatsApp and also then shared with Facebook. I think that's what's been prompting a lot of people to migrate and explore these other platforms. The fact that this is all now clearly set out in the policy and there's more clarity and transparency around the kind of data that's being collected and shared.
So let's break down why Signal is better than WhatsApp if you actually think it is. Like, I know that the fact is that WhatsApp had to introduce disappearing messages, much like Signal, after this brouhaha over privacy. But the main thing is what Signal actually stores and saves compared to what WhatsApp actually stores and saves. So if you can actually take us through that, that would be great.
Sure. So I think Signal's privacy policy again sets out the kind of data that they collect, and they say that they only store and collect phone numbers. Which is something, a basic attribute that you will need to be able to run your profile, or use that platform. Contacts can also be accessed optionally with certain safeguards, and any data related to user support. So if you reach out to them for support, that's some information that they collect. Telegram says that they collect user ID data, which is mobile number, profile pictures, contacts, and contact information. WhatsApp sets out the different kinds of attributes that it collects, including usage and log information. A lot of this is sort of service-related, diagnostic, performance information, and they describe how they use this activity as well. Device information like battery level, signal strength, app version, browser information, these kind of data attributes. So I think this is where a lot of people have been, and also the sort of key differentiator that WhatsApp could also share this data with Facebook and the Facebook group of companies.
Now, let me just be a little provocative here before I go to Abir. Like, the fact is that when I run a Google search, or when I run a YouTube search, or when I run a Facebook search, in any case, the ads that these platforms then prompt me are, the algorithm is basically sitting inside my head. It's got.
Barkha, I've lost you there. I don't know if that's just me.
Hi, Barkha, I can't hear you.
Access to what I'm thinking about. Okay, I think, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm saying, why is WhatsApp so much worse than other platforms like Google, like Facebook, which also algorithmically are basically spying on you?
Right. I think it would be hard for me to comment on that. What I would actually want to talk about a little more here is the need for, simpler and more consumable privacy policy, so that there is a lot more transparency around what each of these different platforms collect and share and what they do at the back end with this data as well. Which sort of also brings us to this baseline need for a data protection law, kind of setting out these guardrails, which then the law steps in and dictates or sort of guides businesses, companies on what are the do's and don'ts, how do you collect data, how do you share it, how do you store and transfer it. Rather than, so right now, a lot of companies will put up their hands themselves and say, this is how we collect and share data. These are the design choices we may have made, for respecting user privacy. But if there were a law in place, then that sort of, it obliges the companies to do this themselves. And there is a culture of privacy that develops across all segments and within the user base as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Pranesh, I'm hoping you can hear me, and if you want to add, jump in there, and then we'll go to Abir. I think what I was trying to say is that in any case, and I'm not a techie, so correct me if I'm wrong. One, if someone wants to hack me, all they have to do is actually install malware on my phone, and they can pretty much know what I'm doing because they can just mirror my phone. So that's about, how easy it is to actually get into somebody's systems. The second point is, why the focus on WhatsApp alone? We need to understand why WhatsApp is different in terms of invading your privacy from, let's say, Google or YouTube or Facebook.
So on the first point, yes, having things like end-to-end encryption don't actually protect you from malware that's actually installed on your phone, because it's on your phone, it's not directly in an encrypted fashion. As to why WhatsApp is worse than Google or Facebook itself or Twitter, etc., I actually don't think it is any worse. It's right now there is a panic caused by this. If you remember, before 2016, before end-to-end encryption was introduced, WhatsApp could actually read your messages, just as Gmail even now can actually read all the emails that you're sending, the confidential emails that you're sending. They can be read by Google, right? Mm-hmm. And WhatsApp was in a similar position before 2016, and now they voluntarily harm their own business interests in a way and introduced end-to-end encryption, which means they can't read your messages despite the recent changes in the privacy policy and so on. And so it's not actually any worse than any of the alternatives that you're talking about. In fact, in some ways, it is better. And so I'm not quite sure why right now there is such a fuss about it, as opposed to a few years ago when the privacy policy changed to allow for deeper integration between WhatsApp and Facebook.
What do you think of the new business policy that they just announced, which most people have understood, Pranesh, to mean that they can basically take your data and share it with advertisers on Facebook?
No, that's not what the new business policy, the new policy says at all. It allows for certain kinds of services to be provided to you. For instance, the main changes in the new policy relate to, one, payments, because WhatsApp is now integrating payments into its platform, and two, relate to allowing for, say, businesses to interact with their customers using WhatsApp, and for users to be able to see, say, a catalog of businesses that are available on WhatsApp, to be able to, say, purchase things from them, and so on. Mm-hmm. And so those are the main changes that are being brought about by the new policy revisions.
And you're not particularly disturbed by them, Pranesh?
By these changes, no, I'm not particularly disturbed. What I fail to quite understand is when people wish to shift away from, say, WhatsApp for whatever concerns they may have, why would they be shifting to another equally closed walled garden? So you have a situation, let's compare to email. So in email, you can be using Google's services, and you can send an email to another person using Yahoo's services, who can send a separate email to someone who has their own email server, like I do, right? And that all works. There's interoperability. But if you're using WhatsApp, you can't send a message to a Signal user, who can't send a message to a Telegram user. And there are these false boundaries that are being put between these services, not for any technical reason.
It's like the ancient Apple and Windows debate in a way, right?
Exactly. So people, these networks are building up these services in such a way that you can't interoperate and chat with people on other networks artificially for boundaries that they put in place. So why would you move to another thing like that instead of moving to truly open communications using things like, say, Matrix, which is one example of a protocol that allows for this kind of interoperability that I'm talking about, which is actually open, which allows you to own your own data rather than someone else owning your data. It allows you to communicate with people on other networks which are not your own, and allows for greater openness and freedom, and doesn't allow any one company to monopolize the network as we see with these large services.
So let me take this to Abir. What I'm hearing Pranesh say is that there were problems with WhatsApp, but actually WhatsApp has responded in minimizing or containing some of those problems. That as long as there remains sort of walled gardens around Signal, Telegram, and WhatsApp, this is basically commerce. These are not open source platforms. This is basically all about business. And actually, there isn't that much difference between them. Although we've all seen the here's the irony. I was going to say, we've all seen the WhatsApp forwards that are floating around that explain the difference between WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal, and they're all being disseminated on WhatsApp. Abir, do you agree with Pradesh that WhatsApp isn't all that bad? From what I understand, actually, the Signal is saving less of our information than WhatsApp is. I'm saying this in very non-technical layperson's terms, so please do correct me if I'm wrong at any stage. Abir.
Yeah, Barkha, I will look at this entire situation slightly differently. I don't think right now, from where I see it, it's not a comparison between WhatsApp and others. It's actually WhatsApp policy saying take it or leave it.
Right.
It's my way or the highway. That's the problem. And where do they get this power from? I think you mentioned it very correctly initially. Is that you may shift, but if your contacts, your friends, your family, do not shift to Signal or a Telegram, it doesn't make any sense. So that is complete logic known as what we call as the network effect. If the higher the network, the more valuable the platform becomes. Then it doesn't actually matter which platform is better. It actually matters whose network is bigger. And that is the reason why the likes of WhatsApp, the likes of Facebook, the likes of Google, the entire theory is network effects. The higher the network, the higher the use. I think the rudimentary example when we started legal practice was the phone. The mobile is only important when my contact also has a mobile. Now we have moved to WhatsApp. So I do not think the time has come yet to compare these all softwares, which is there. The issue today is the entire tone and tenor of take it or leave it. By 8th February, if you do not accept, you're out of WhatsApp. And if you are out of WhatsApp, you're out of touch with your connects, your business. Being a lawyer, I would say things like account registration, device information. And the lawyer in me would say any other information is also mentioned. So it's a very broad term which they can share. When WhatsApp came, the reason why it became big was when I joined WhatsApp, I do not want WhatsApp to share it with any other advertisers, either directly or through their group of companies. Now they are saying that they will compulsorily share it, and you have no other option but to accept it. I think that there lies the problem, in my opinion.
But can I just be before I come to Praveen Khandelwal, and I know Pranesh is disagreeing with you, but I actually don't understand. So I see problems, a lot of problems with privacy on tech, And I pretty much think for all of us who are online, we have effectively surrendered Abira privacy. Like I don't know that we can really sort of think that Google doesn't know what I search for. Google does know what I search for, that Facebook doesn't know what I search for. The prompts I get, the fact that unless I go into my YouTube history and I consciously deactivate it, YouTube will prompt me those videos, right? In all of these platforms and these messaging services, isn't that the case? And if there isn't a substantive difference, why do you think millions of Indians have moved to Signal in the last few days? Let me ask Abir that, and then I'll come to you, Praveen.
I think Pranesh made this point also. I think it's just in the news right now. I think the issue, like you mentioned, is
Yeah.
the issue that you mentioned. I think it's all pervasive. That's why I think it was mentioned by our previous panelists that we need a data protection law. I think the issue is with all the tech giants. Why only you're talking about Facebook, Google? I'll bring in Amazon also. So you have this entire survey which is going on across the globe, right from US to Japan. So I'm talking about west to east. Everybody is
Yeah.
deliberating that. How do you regulate this big tech from a, I would say, a privacy angle and a competition law angle and a contractual angle and a privacy angle? So all these angles are being looked apart. And I think the what you mentioned, the big tech is the big daddy right now. So all these need to be regulated. I think WhatsApp we are discussing today because it's in the news. Tomorrow Google comes up with the similar news. We'll discuss that also.
Okay, I'll get Praveen Khandelwal back, but what I've actually heard both Pradesh and Abir say is that WhatsApp same to same with all the other big tech platforms, in which case, what's the noise about? Is it just that it's the present headline? I think we may have a different perspective from Srinidhi. But Praveen Khandelwal, आप लोग तो चाह रहे हैं कि WhatsApp ban करो. Why? You are more threatened at a commercial level because there are now WhatsApp payments. That's what I'm understanding, which has nothing to do actually with privacy.
Well, Barkha, it is not the matter only related to the trade.
Okay.
My biggest worry, my biggest worry is that the kind of data what WhatsApp want to acquire, that relates not only to my business but also of my personal family. They want to know my contacts, they want to know my family, they want to know my friends, they want to
I mean,
access my.
but look at us. We put our relationship status on Facebook. We pose constantly on Instagram. We have become a society of voyeurs and exhibitionists. So, are we now going to judge these platforms? We have a choice. I don't get this. We have a choice.
Barkha, let me tell
One second,
you.
Pradesh. I know you want to counter me, but just let him complete his point. Yeah.
So let me tell you that when we place our photos or anything, that is my choice. But in
Okay.
this case, WhatsApp is using a gunpoint in asking me either you give the consent or get out from WhatsApp. So compulsory obtaining a consent is something which is against my right. I have Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which gives me a right to privacy. So
What
my
is your problem as a trading body representing the main traders association in India? What is your problem other than WhatsApp payments?
no, I'm least bothered about WhatsApp payment. I'm
Then
bothered about I'm bothered about that my entire business scenario will be acquired by a company which is known as WhatsApp, and Facebook is the parent company. And in turn, what they are demanding from me, that I should allow them to forward those or to use that data with Facebook at present, and tomorrow, since I have already given my consent, tomorrow they can sell my data to even China also. So my biggest worry is, I mean, today this statement may be a
okay.
laughing statement, but if when because in data privacy law in 2019
Yeah.
and others, consent is the main thing. So
The problem, sir, I actually take the point you're making. I actually take the point you're making that even though in the fine print, it's like like those ads for mutual funds where they say mutual fund investment is subject to market risk, but the market risk is written in the tiniest font. And the point is, we're all in such a hurry that Facebook, WhatsApp, everybody gives you terms and conditions. You're in such a bloody hurry all the time. You just say accept and move on, and that's on us, right? We're irritated to
Barkha,
read
here
that
is a
fine
point.
print. But Praveen, hang on. No, hang on. I'll come back to you. 1 second, sir. I want to just take up this very interesting argument that's building on this program that actually there isn't a substantive difference between WhatsApp and other messaging services. And I'm not sure if Srinathi agrees, but there's a comment on our live stream. Elon Musk spoke about Signal, and that probably explains why there's been this mass shift to Signal. There's no privacy in either of the platforms. In a way, it's good as it might curb the fake WhatsApp forward. So, okay, Srinathi, let me take this to you and then to Pranesh, because you heard what both Abir and Pranesh said. They don't think that there's actually a difference. You need to unmute yourself before you respond. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah. No, Barkha, so I agree that there isn't a stark change. This is not new data that they're collecting. This was already the position earlier. And Pranesh correctly identified the actual changes on the business accounts and the payment features. In addition, the policy is a little bit better explained. And I think that update triggered this prompt where everyone got the notifications being accepted by February so and so. Otherwise, we can't use this. And there's a lot of conversation on this being take it or leave it, or the fact that it says the situation has somewhat changed from earlier. You could opt out of data sharing, which I don't believe was the case. But now you don't have that option anymore. But I think what prompted this was what this prompted was people catching on to the idea that there is so much data that is being collected. In contrast, other platforms don't collect as many data points. If
you're kind of breaking up, but I'm
trying to use WhatsApp, then you must consent to data sharing with Facebook also. Typically, I'd also like to point out, because I pointed out the different device sort of information also they collect, stuff like battery level, signal strength. So all of this is typically linked to some feature that WhatsApp might be providing. For instance, when we are on a call and it tells us that the WhatsApp prompts you saying you have poor connection or you have low battery, that's typically that's probably why that feature is why they're using that attribute as well. But I think what's prompted a lot of shift to even my friends and family groups, people who haven't really been talking about this earlier, what's prompted this is sort of that notification, and then just a lot of oversight around and just a lot of conversation around WhatsApp and Facebook data collection practices.
So I'm now really confused about after listening to all of you, and I think my simple question would be the basic question, Pranesh, to you. Are you on WhatsApp? And if you're not, how long have you not been on WhatsApp? And if you are, do you feel like there's any significant difference from a consumer point of view in using Signal versus WhatsApp?
So I wasn't on WhatsApp until a couple of years ago, when for various reasons I had to join to talk to some people and who were tired of using other platforms and said, use WhatsApp or else I'm not going to talk to you. And so I resisted. I really tried.
I am one of those. I migrated for 30 minutes to Signal. It felt like being in a country, in a neighborhood where I knew nobody else. I just couldn't find anybody there, and so I just migrated back to WhatsApp in 2 minutes.
So given the the techie circle that I traveled in, I have plenty of friends and family in on Signal. But and Signal, just one correction, is actually open source. Both its client and its server are open source. But it doesn't.
Can you explain, from Signal, could I send someone a message to another messaging service?
No, you can't. So it's not interoperable, but it is open source. So you can. The only benefit is you can actually read the source and you can copy the source, launch your own competitor to Signal if you want, but you can't actually communicate with people in Signal from outside of Signal.
Okay,
and so it's a.
I mean, I think most of us are not writing our own code now to create a competitive messaging service to Signal. Right?
There are actually many people who are doing so right now on GitHub and other places. There are people who have created code for that. Now, just a couple of other points I wanted to make before coming to the to the question. One, about we keep talking about data and data being shared and so on, except you actually need to go into the fine print as to what kind of data when you're talking about data. Now, contact data is one thing that was brought up by Praveen ji. Now, that actually is not data you need to share with WhatsApp. You can use WhatsApp without sharing your contact list, without sharing your address book. You don't need to give it that permission in order to be able to use it. Most people do, but you don't need to. And in the new policy, they've actually added a protection. If you share contacts who aren't using WhatsApp, then they'll keep that information secured in a way that they can't identify. So they'll use what is known as pseudonymization. So they won't actually make use of that data. They won't make use of the data of people who aren't on WhatsApp, even if you upload their phone number and so on. So that's actually good. That's not what most companies do. Most companies actually make use of that kind of data.
Okay, there's a question on the stream saying, how do we know if the code Signal has shared as open source is actually what's running on our phones? But beyond the code, I have a question. Is there any way in which any messaging service is qualitatively better than the other in terms of privacy? Because as frankly, I'm not a coder, right? What do I care about? I care that what I say to people I want to talk to every day remains private between them and me.
So for the first question on open source, you don't need to trust Google Play Store, the version that's on the iOS App Store, Google Play Store, etc. You can actually what is called as compiling. You can create your own copy of the Signal app and run it, and it'll work fine. You can use the code that they made publicly available and just do it. So you don't need to trust them on this question. The second point, actually, yes, I would say Signal does have better privacy features. For instance, you can have a privacy feature where they know that you've sent a message to, they can deliver a message to another person without knowing who sent that message. That kind of feature isn't available on WhatsApp, even though the encryption code is the same. But those kinds of privacy features come with downsides. For example, if you're in a group chat and you want to add a new member to that group, now you might want to allow them to see all the previous messages. Now, the way WhatsApp and Signal, the kind of encryption that they have, you can't do that. But Telegram, which uses a different kind of encryption, you can allow them to see the chat history as well. With Signal, for instance, you don't have cloud backup. So if your phone breaks and you can't access that phone and your messages, then and if you haven't made your own local copy of the backup and so on, then your messages are gone. So with improved security, with all these fancy kinds of encryption, there are trade-offs. People should make the decision that they want based on those trade-offs. And I'm just saying that what's best is if people make informed decisions.
Now, the point is, Pranesh, the level of digital literacy that you're talking about, I think most of us do not have. And I think what most people on our stream would want to know are just commonsensical everyday questions. So, for example, you just said the Signal does have relatively better privacy sort of options than, let's say, WhatsApp and Telegram. Abir, would you migrate to Signal? Have you migrated to Signal?
Not yet.
And for example, the question, what is the surety that the Signal app will secure our privacy?
I think
I've unfortunately been using I've been using Signal for longer than I've been using WhatsApp, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
But I continue now to use Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp, Matrix, my own server of XMPP. So I just happen to be on all the world where everyone else is.
And basically live inside your phone, which is all of us. But okay, go ahead. Abir, go ahead. Sorry, I was asking you the question of whether you migrated, and if you haven't, why not?
See, I haven't. I think you only answered it yourself. When you migrated, you did not find any of your connects and contacts there. So the entire thing, what I said from day one. When we started the debate, Pranesh is a techie, obviously, and the stuff that he says, that it's learning for us also. I'm not saying that I've understood it completely, but as a common man who wants to use the device, my messaging services will only make sense when my connects and contacts are there. If I move to Signal, like you have done, you have come back. It's no longer, I do not think, I'm repeating the point, it's not the factum, in my opinion, and subject to correction, it's not the factum which is better or which is worse right now. What is the factum is, where is the network right now? Where is my network of connects, my contacts? When we say about business users also, a lot of business is being conducted through WhatsApp. When I say this, like for example, you can tell your clients, you can give your bank account details. A lot of stuff happens on WhatsApp. Now, when I use WhatsApp, I have not given them the permission to share it with anybody else. That's why I'm using WhatsApp. If I just take 2 minutes to explain the 10-year history of WhatsApp, When in 2010 they came, they said our privacy policy is the best. 2006, 2014, Facebook acquired. 2016, they changed it. They allowed some data to be shared with Facebook. I think Srinidhi made the point that you still could opt out. That I do not want my data to be shared. My point is, it's not the quality of data, it's not the quantum of data. The fact is, have you taken my consent to share my data?
And but today, so many of us have given away our consent without understanding, right?
Without understanding.
The point is that on all terms and conditions, I'm among those who write I accept, just so I can click to the next page.
Correct. Even that, whatever the limited factum is there, even if terms and condition, I think, like I said, is in the headline right now. If I'm literate enough, I can accept the terms and conditions before February 8, 2021. Today, I can't. So my fundamental point is, this is the same point on which they have been investigating throughout the globe. Now, if you see, I think Srinidhi will explain this point better, perhaps, which she's a data law expert. If you look at the terms and conditions, why does it say that it is not applicable to European Union? It is, there is a reason why. The reason is the data protection law there.
Right.
The reason is, the reason is France, my notes say France and Germany have inquired about them.
Yeah.
So the fact is, I completely agree with what Srinidhi is trying to say, is that this is the chance, I think, what my limited representation is, the government should use this chance to frame a proper data protection law. I think this is the chance which WhatsApp has given. This has made a furor in public. Let the government use it and make a proper law. There are other issues also. I would say privacy issues, which Mr. Praveen pointed out. That is effectively there. The point is informed consent. Have you taken my consent to do what you are doing? The answer is no. So let's use this opportunity to, one, spread some literacy, like which my esteemed panelists can do, and also use this opportunity to frame up the data protection law.
Okay, in fact, there is a question speaking precisely to your point about the government of India should not remain out of this debate. It should step in and say what the policy is. And Srinidhi, that's the point, that Europe has a very, very clear policy. So actually, all of these platforms have had to sort of create exemptions for operating in Europe. But I still want to understand, right? Please, someone tell me. Recently, I read an article that said that actually the details of your WhatsApp group chat can show up in a Google search. And this was brought to the notice of Pranesh, you're saying, no, but I read it. I don't know if it's true or not. Was that fake news, Pranesh?
It's false.
Okay, I just read it. So I'm asking, is that possible? Because your chats are meant to be encrypted. So how did they show up, etc. Right? So people don't know. What I'm trying to say by raising this question is, even somebody like me, I'm not a techie, but spend masses of time online. I think I'm aware. I think I follow these conversations, but I simply do not know what I'm required to do. So at some point, you just give up and say, hey, listen, there is no privacy anyway. There is no privacy possible. You have to live with that assumption. Srinidhi.
No, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think what Abir said, which is, and what I started off with, is the need for a data protection law. Like you've correctly identified, these changes don't apply to the European Union. In the EU, WhatsApp's policy is that they don't share data with Facebook because they've been pulled up by regulators before for that. Which on that law sets out the guardrails on how they collect, share, and use data. We've been talking about the privacy law for many years now. There are versions of the law that have been discussed, and a parliamentary committee is currently looking at this and will come out with recommendations soon. It would have been interesting to see how this incident played out if we already had a law. Because once we have a legal structure around it, there are some restrictions around what really is informed consent. You can't have pre-tick check boxes. You can't have blanket catch-all consent for these purposes. And like once you have a legal structure in place, it's very likely that other ancillary industries will emerge around this. We see this in some piecemeal form, like data auditors or advisors who can bridge that gap between users and help them decide what is better. Just as an example, like the way food delivery apps have aggregate these restaurant reviews and tell you 4 out of 5 is the score. Maybe platforms could also be rated based on their privacy practices, how transparent they are, what are the design choices they've made at the back end. A simple rating system which is much more consumable by an average layperson rather than very detailed, fleshed out privacy policies that people like you and people like me. But yeah, I think that's really the point, having a baseline law in place and also these a more focused attempt at making these policies more consumable through just-in-time
Okay,
notices or
I,
updating this.
I've got a couple of minutes left on the program, so concluding remarks. Praveen Khandelwal, you said you're worried that data could be sold to China. It has nothing to do with payments. Why are they asking you for all this information? Have you deleted your WhatsApp account? And if you haven't, why haven't you? Did I catch you on that?
Barkha, so far, I am still continuing with my WhatsApp account because of the simple reason that till the time I am allowed that without giving forcibly consent, if I am allowed, I will do so till that time.
Okay.
But if any point of time, if they force me, that not only me but 7 crore traders of the country will opt out from WhatsApp. So I mean, there has to be a policy, and we have seen that whether it is e-commerce or it is data protection, all these companies are flouting the laws of the land, and no action has been taken against them. So therefore, very
Okay.
firmly, we are taking up this matter with government of India. If government will not take step, we don't mind to go to even court also. And on the other side, we would be advising traders across country that no trader should give forcible consent. That is
Okay.
that is my
I
take.
mean, it's not forcible consent, but it's not informed consent. I think we have to use those words carefully. It's not, no one's holding a gun to your head. Abir, last thoughts. How do you see this debate actually playing out? Do you think the government will jump in and actually use this as an opportunity to have a data protection law? Because frankly, it took years almost for WhatsApp to convince the government to give consent for WhatsApp payments. And I just don't see the government right now stepping back into this space. I'm not sure, I could be wrong. Abir?
So I would say the government, one is whether they will act, I'm not very sure. They should act. I think there's some pressure from the corporates also. I read a news item somewhere that Tatas have actually asked their employees not to use, I may be wrong. I read some news somewhere that Tatas have asked their employees not to use WhatsApp. So there's a lot of debate. Pranesh may have a different perspective on the fine print. But
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of people do not know the fine print or do not know the relevance of
That's
that
the
fine print.
point, right? What most people watching this program want to know, and I'll give Pranesh the last word. We do not want to know whether we can code a competitor to Signal. We pretty much are resigned to the fact that our searches are sort of algorithmically known. We just want that last vestige of privacy, that when we talk to another human being in a conversation that is private to us, it will not be used by business, advertisers, or random strangers. I think that is what most people want to know. And given that need, that human need, because we're all living our lives so much virtually now that it's almost like living it, for real. What people want to know is which platform, which messaging service should I be using? What would you say to them?
So I won't be providing recommendations. What I can say is that there is a lot of people are making their decisions based on incorrect, information. This information, according to the privacy policy itself, revised privacy policy, cannot be sold to China, cannot be sold to advertisers, cannot be sold to third parties. Your discussions with your clients cannot be shown to anyone else. And in fact, even WhatsApp can't see your discussions with your clients. Okay, so all these concerns that people have around the privacy of their communications, it's technically secured. Forget about the privacy policy and the law in India. The law in India is next to non-existent, but it's technically secured because of the kind of encryption they use. Now, sharing with Facebook exists in EU as well, both under the previous 2018 policy as well as under the 2021 policy. It's just that you can't, in the EU, what WhatsApp shares with Facebook can't be used by Facebook for its own services. And that's the difference, for improving its own services as opposed to improving WhatsApp and so on. So I would urge people to wait a bit, to wait for people to go through the policies in detail, to come out with better analysis, and then make a decision. No one is required to give consent to Facebook or WhatsApp using their data, and I think people can make the choice to leave or to stay, but they should do so based on understanding of the situation rather than fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah. So I think that's the contradiction of the human response, that on the one hand, when we're asked to read the fine print, we say accept without reading it. And then there's this sort of mass panic right now about what WhatsApp can do, and everybody's reacting to that. So either way, digital literacy is actually where the conversation needs to shift to, and it never does, because it's complicated, it's complex, and it requires us to read the fine print. So if we can bring ourselves to have longer attention spans, that would solve a lot of our data issues online. But of course, the point is well taken, that there is, as all of you have said, next to no data protection law in this country, and Europe is a good example of how it is technically possible when countries actually mandate it to be so. We'll have to leave it there. Abir, Pranesh, Praveen, and Srinidhi, thank you so much. I know there are lots of questions, but they're the same thing again and again. Signal could be bought by someone. Which messaging service should I go to? And many other conspiracy theories. So we'll just leave it there. Thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.